third chapter of Pitstop Powerhouse. We are sitting today in Paul Ricard, ready for the third round of the Spanish Formula 4 Championship with Callan O'Keefe. Callan, pleased to be here with you today.
Yeah,
and,
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Happy that you can spare some time with us, which I know that you're very busy, and especially in a race weekend. So that's really much appreciated.
Yeah, we're really busy this weekend. We're looking after 2 drivers in Spanish F4 and 1 driver in Euro Cup 3 as well. It's absolutely flat out, but thankfully great weather, very consistent conditions, which is going to make the driver's life a little bit more easy this weekend. But yeah, looking forward to hopefully what's a good weekend to come.
Hopefully that will be the case. So first of all, of course I could introduce you, and that would be very nice, but I think it's more interesting if, for the people who are watching, you tell us who is Callan O'Keefe.
So I'm Callan O'Keefe, founder of School of 10 Driver Development. I don't really know how to summarize us in kind of one statement. We're kind of everything that a driver needs. We're driver coaches, performance managers, the link between, if you need a specific person in motorsport, we can help you find that. And basically the motivation for starting the company was during my own career when I used to race. I raced all the way up to F3. I was a Red Bull F1 Junior, Lotus F1 Junior, Vice World Karting Champion, British Champion. So hopefully coming with a fairly decent pedigree, but I never really had the support around me. I always had, let's say, the right backing in terms of junior teams from Formula 1, but that didn't really come with support. So I set up the company about 5 years ago to try and create a one-stop shop for everything that a driver could need to make them successful so that they can just focus on rocking up at the racetrack and driving cars fast.
So now that you speak about that, I do have to say that I love the name. It gives such a great vibe. And I think that is actually something that is quite important as well, because it sets up expectations, you could say.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the story?
Exactly. So the story is really great, actually. I was in Lapland with a WRC co-driver, a guy called Marco Salminen.
Yep.
And we were riding snowmobiles, and this is when I was trying to find a name to call it. It was O'Keefe Driver Development. I toyed around with like a Japanese name because I love the Japanese principles of the way they look for continuous improvement and everything. And this guy was an absolute maniac on a snowmobile. He was like full attack, but super calm with the way that he did it. And he called it the Salmon and School of Send. And as he said the name, I was like, that's a great name for a company. It's unique. It's something different. As you said, it's memorable. And I think it also kind of shows what we want to do. We want to make motorsport professional. We want to make drivers professional as we can. And we also want to make it fun. We want to make it enjoyable because these should be the best years of their life as they start to build themselves up to a professional career.
But you do more than just teach them to send it.
Yes, yes, exactly. Hopefully we're covering everything that they need. Yes. But the sending part of it is the one that gets on YouTube, so it's fine.
And that's what probably drivers want to, that's the first one they're going to think about. But tell me a little bit more about because you said it's a one-stop shop for everything that a driver could need. But many people, I don't think they know what a driver could need. They would think, well, that you just sit on the car and drive. But that's not really the case, is it?
No. So I think, we were having this chat before we came on air. The level of motorsport now is crazy, and you only have to look at a championship like FIA F3. You have 30 cars within 1 second on one push lap, and that's what Spanish F4 is the school for. So we're trying to get drivers ready for that. We're trying to prepare them for the next stage of their career. F2 is more complicated, and then you go to Formula 1, WEC, IndyCar, whatever your dreams are. It's super close and it's super tight. So it's first of all instilling that hey, the details matter, because when you're 15, 16 years old, fresh out of karting, I don't think you really have that understanding that actually that counts. So that's the first thing, that professional mentality that, if you don't use a meter of track, it's going to cost you. And here, half a tenth over 15 corners. Well, that's 7/10. You've lost the lap time, you qualified 20th. Sorry, that's the weekend over. Then there's the stuff away from the track. We're preparing them on simulators. We're making sure that they're working with nutritionists, psychologists, trainers, physios, everything now from such a young age. It's taken so seriously, and they're high-performance athletes. So we're really trying to dissect where are their weaknesses and turn them into strengths, where are their strengths, turning them into super strengths, and really instill that professional value so that it's not a shock when they get to the higher levels and hopefully become professional drivers.
And you're in a unique position because you've been there yourself. This is not just an expert in motorsport giving advice. This is a guy who's been in the car before. As you said before, you've raced, you've won, you've risen to a nice level, and you know how it goes and what it takes to win, or what it should take to keep improving. So how does that help you work with them in a more maybe direct or personal level?
I think so. my career could have been very, very different. I started off karting very late. I was 13. I got lapped my first karting race. I wasn't by any means like a, let's say, like a naturally gifted driver. It was a real struggle for me to get to the pace. But 1 year after my first karting race, I finished third in the World Championships. And the guy that won was Alex Albon. The guy that was second was Max Verstappen. I was third and Pierre Gasly was fourth. So I stayed another year in karting. I finished second in the World Championships. Charles Leclerc won that year. I won the British Championship against drivers like George Russell. So, you know, immediately I went in and I was successful against a really high level of driver. And I think, as I said, I didn't really have anyone teaching me why I was successful. I was just fast. It kind of clicked. I had a very good karting team around me in Ricky Flynn Motorsport, and they really believed in me and built me up. But I wasn't really learning the process. It was just really good people instilling their knowledge to me, but without any real structure to it. And then when you start to struggle, you don't really know why you're struggling, so you don't know how to pull it back. And, you know, I like to sit back here now going, if I had had someone like myself, I would have hopefully been a professional driver at the very least, because I had the results for it. But certainly I would have enjoyed my racing more. I would have had better results. I would have made the maximum of the opportunities that I had. And that's where I think really I hopefully can help benefit young drivers. And that's where I have that special driving force for myself to say, hey, you know, if there's anything that we can do to help, don't make the same mistakes as me. Let's learn fast, let's grow, and let's exploit even more potential than you think that you have. Because, yeah, with the right people around you and the right work ethic and everything, you can achieve far more than you think you can. And
you speak about if you had this situation with you. Do you sometimes think, like, what you would have, what kind of advice you would have given yourself? Or, you know, if you were coaching yourself, you know, what would have I told myself in that situation? Is that something that you can draw on from, you know, from your own experience to help drivers?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's what makes a really good coach. I think you have to have it as if you're the driver. When they win, it has to feel like your win, and when they lose, it has to feel like your loss as well. You know, you only really get one opportunity to be a professional driver, and you have to be all in with the people that you work with. You have to be all in, and it hopefully as well creates that trust, because trust is everything when you're working with a driver. Because if I say, hey, we've got a 1 lap peak on the tyres, I need you to brake 15 meters later, even though you feel like you're at the limit, I know you're capable of doing it, I know the car can do it, go out and do it. You have to have that trust and that belief in working with each other. And I think having been through those experiences in my own career, hopefully it helps me identify a little bit more what the drivers are going through, you know, the young early stages of their career, help them, as I said, turn their strengths into super strengths, because you can really see that these are the key features that they need, but also help them identify their weaknesses quicker, understand their weaknesses, and then hopefully improve and build themselves not only as drivers, but also as people.
So coming back a little bit more onto your own, let's say, I want to say career, but also your life, because, you know, for a racing driver, I think a career and life, sometimes it's one and the same. You said that you started late, so how did that come about? How were you drawn to motorsport from even a younger age than you started, or was it something that kind of happened? So
I'm from South Africa originally, so my parents' dream was always that I'd play rugby or cricket. That was like the starting point. And
as one would do in South Africa, right?
Of course. I wasn't big enough to be a rugby player. I was okay at cricket, but it was a bit too slow moving for me. So when I was 4 years old, my dad made the biggest mistake of his life, and he took me to see some Formula 1 cars testing at Callan. And from that point onwards, I was just obsessed with motorsport. I had no idea how to get into it. My family is not from racing at all. They don't even really like it. My dad now actually watches all my drivers' races. He obviously was a great supporter and did everything he could for me. But now he's kind of more into it than he was back then. And the motorsport scene in South Africa, unfortunately, isn't that prevalent. It's quite small, you know, a national karting race will get 10 karts. So it's super tricky kind of starting there and knowing where to start and getting the right advice. Thankfully, we moved to England when I was 12, and I kind of, not use that as a guilt trip, but sort of did, because I was begging my parents every day for 8 years to find me a go-kart, trying every avenue I could, and then eventually I was like, okay, well, we're moving now. Can I have a go-kart? Can I start racing properly? Can I actually try and make a career out of this? And they said, yeah, to keep me happy, go race your national...
It won't happen, it won't happen, but it actually did.
6 months later, he's going to give up and we can sell the go-kart, and that's it. But I went and I raced my national... like karting, or the club level karting championship at a place called Bayford Meadows, small track in Kent in England, and I won that championship. And then my parents went, okay, well the next step now is to take you to an international level. You have to go race WSK, CIK, FIA, and if you do a good job, we'll keep backing you. But the moment that you go back to school, you know, get yourself on track for a proper life, let's say, yeah,
a normal life, whatever it is that it's normal.
Exactly, and thankfully, you know, had the right people around me, as I said, with the team. They really believed in me. They put everything behind me. And yeah, the results started coming, and that's kind of how my career started. I only did 2 years in karting, and then I got signed by Red Bull and went into car racing when I was 15 years old, which now doesn't seem that special, but back then was like a super talking point about being too young, which when we compare it now to the drivers we have in F4, it's crazy, isn't it? If you're not testing cars at 14, you're too old.
I was going to say, because for you it was like maybe a more clean transition, but now we often see like the top karting drivers, they're testing 8-9 months before they actually start racing with single seaters, which is, you know, pretty different from your time. But I was going to ask you, you were in two, not one, but two Formula One programs. So again, you're also in a very good position to see what big companies did to support drivers and draw again from that experience and see, you know, what they did well and what they didn't do maybe that well. I know that Red Bull is a tricky place to be supported by. They give a lot of support, yes, but there's also a lot of pressure. So how do you apply that knowledge of how pressure works with young kids who are maybe more sensitive to it, perhaps, than maybe you would be at your age now?
I think the interesting thing is kind of how everyone is living their own variation of the same story in motorsport, and it's how they deal with that. So for example, I use Red Bull as a great one, right? Because everyone says, right, you're a Red Bull driver, there's more pressure, it's more cutthroat. It's not. All of Formula One is the same, but it has the reputation that it is. So drivers put on the Red Bull helmet and immediately they start putting more pressure on themselves. But no one's actually putting pressure on you, because if you want to get to Formula One, if you want to be a professional driver, you have to perform, you have to do a good job, you have to win races, you have to do all the extra bits. So it's actually kind of interesting that you say that, because when I was there, for sure I fell into the pressure of Red Bull. I was 15, this was my opportunity, everything like that. But you kind of come out of it and then you go to the next junior team and it's the same here, but it's not branded the same. So you have the same situations that you have to find yourself in. Then you leave the junior teams and then you're looking for money to go racing by yourself. Same thing. It's kind of funny how, like I said, whether you're a Red Bull junior or whether you're a young kid in karting, the situation still remains the same. But it's interesting to be able to then relay that information to young drivers and say, hey, the pressure's going to be there regardless. It's the way that you create the environment around you and the way that you see the environment that's going to determine how you handle it. So that was a really interesting perspective.
Do you also work with drivers and families to create that environment? Because we know that sometimes, in some cases, families can be, let me just say, decisive. Whether it's good or bad, but it's going to be decisive. So do you work with families on that side as well?
I think it's very, very important for me that families remain families. You know, you bring the coach, the manager, whatever it is, to do the job, and we're there to be the person that has the let's say, like the very factitious sort of like, this is where it is, this is where we need to be, these are the numbers, this is the data, this is the process. And one of the things that I always want is I always want this to be enjoyable. As I said, you know, these are young kids. They're striving, they're in the top 0.01% of young athletes or young individuals who are striving to do something truly exceptional. They're driving on a racetrack, everything's happening, and they're all within 1 second of each other. It's if you explained it to someone in the real world that didn't know motorsport or didn't know, you know, top level sport, they'd think that you're crazy that a 15-year-old kid can do that. So I think I always have that in the back of my mind to say, hey, you know, as much as we're all in it now, they're still young, they're still developing. You can't judge a 15-year-old kid and say whether or not they're the next superstar, because they're still figuring themselves out, they're still figuring the world out around them, they're working out all the extra stuff that goes with it. And I think that's an important perspective to have on top of all of this, that, hey, you know, when I started racing, I got lapped my first karting race. If everyone had given up on me because I wasn't 13 and the finished product, I would have had a very different career with a lot less opportunity. So I want to drive that through with everything that we do, that the whole ideology of the drivers we work with, we have two conditions. Number one is that you want to be the best that you can be and that you're dedicated. And number two is that you're here for yourself and that you're enjoying your racing. And from those two ingredients, I think you can produce really special athletes.
And when you speak about enjoying, I think that's extremely interesting, because I think it's very obvious that everyone, when they start, you know, a career in motorsport, they're going to dream about Formula One. That's normal. But I think there's such a wide world of motorsport that it's super enjoyable for drivers, you know. And I was recently talking to a driver, and they were saying, you know, drivers in WEC and IndyCar, you see them winning and they look happy. And I was like, well, of course they're going to be happy, aren't they? They're winning. You know, you don't have to be in Formula One to be happy. How are you able to relay this to drivers and families sometimes who are like, you know, they think that Formula One is the only path, but it really isn't?
I mean, if you find the answer to that question, can you tell me?
That would be an answer.
No, I think the key thing is again, it's the perception of the environment you find yourself in. So are you here to become the best racing driver you possibly can? I know a lot of drivers that I race against in my generation, and I mentioned some of the names that I raced against. You know, the best one we raced against was a kid called Nicholas Beer in karting. He was outrageously fast, but he's not racing anymore. So it's not just about being the fastest, it's not just about being the best. There's many different factors that come into play here. So you have to understand that from a young age. You have to try and hammer it home a little bit if people don't listen. And then it's saying, okay, well, of course we set the bar to be a world champion, because that's what you're here for. You only aim to be the best, and that's what you should aim for, because you never know what you're capable of until you set the bar that high. But also, as you said, there's plenty of different opportunities, and you only have to look at someone like Nick de Vries. You know, he wandered away from the single-seated path and ended up coming back. Okay, it wasn't a success, but there's so many different variations of people who just had their options open and they ended up getting to the place that they wanted to. And I think that's a really powerful example of, as I said, not trying to have everything figured out at 15 now in 2024, because in 5 years' time, the landscape's going to be different. And another 5 years after that, the landscape's going to be very, very different. So you have to be adaptable, you have to be ready, and you just have to enjoy the process of making yourself the best possible family or unit, whatever driver that you possibly can be.
So the next question, I suspect what you're going to say, but I want you to tell me why. Do you miss racing?
Every single day. It's just, there's, you know, I'm really grateful for the career that I had. I wish I'd done more, obviously. I think every driver is the same. But it's the best feeling in the world, driving a race car, having your helmet on, being strapped into the race car, especially qualifying. That for me was the big one. You know, a peaky one-lap tyre where you arrive in turn one and you're assessing how much risk you have to take, how much can you get away with, how much do you trust yourself, how much have you tuned into the car. That feeling is something that I'm super grateful that I had a lot of during my career, but I miss every single day. And also from a professional point of view, it's great having a goal, isn't it? To be able to wake up every day with something to push yourself for in the gym, working with people, you know, understanding technically, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. So, yeah, of course, I miss it every day, but hopefully I'm taking that passion and enthusiasm and helping channel that into the young drivers that we're working with to give them the best possible chance of success.
That was going to be my next question. Is that something that that can help you drive that point, you know, enjoy it? Because, first of all, because it has to be enjoyable. And secondly, and I don't mean to say this in a way that, you know, this driver is bad, enjoy it because it's going to be over soon. But it could be.
No,
and
yeah.
How important is it for not just to enjoy it for a professional reason, but also for your own life experience? Because I think that's something that we never think about. We never talk about racing drivers as a life experience to be enjoyed and treasured.
Yeah.
It's only about, you know, the money and the success and the glory. And yes, sure. But there's more to it than that.
The two do go hand in hand, though. Like, I always believe a happy athlete is a successful athlete. A happy businessman is a successful businessman at the top level, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the 0.1%. And you have to be happy. You have to enjoy it. You have to enjoy the process of doing it, not just the result. Because sometimes you put together a perfect race and you finish P5. So if you don't enjoy it, then how do you take the benefit of doing the perfect race? And sometimes you win a race and you get lucky, but you didn't put together the perfect race, and there's stuff that you could learn. So it's understanding how you take the maximum from every situation to make yourself better. But also that goes the next level above as well, to say, you know, you have to, we're in the south of France, we're beautiful weather, amazing racetrack, pushing ourselves all to be better no matter what you're doing in the paddock. And what a life, you know, you have to look and say how lucky we all are to be here. Drivers, engineers, mechanics, of course it's hard work, but you know, the best things in life are. And sometimes it's a nice reminder to keep that positivity and keep that enthusiasm as a starting point, to say, hey, you know, we're all living the dream here. Let's all keep pushing for it. Then it transpires down to a happy driver. Happy driver wins races, and all even more happy after that, aren't we?
And you were talking about having a goal, you know, to push yourself every day when you wake up in the morning. And I think that is something that is not to say that other athletes or other objectives in life don't have it. But I think racing drivers are very good at doing that. So what would be your advice, not for a racing driver, but for someone who in any aspect of life is pushing for a dream? Because, I mean, there's all sorts of dreams, but I think, again, racing drivers are very good at pushing for, you know, lofty goals. So what would be that kind of advice from, you know, someone who is coaching?
I think the first thing is set the bar really, really high. If your dream, it's the cliche, right? If your dream doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. I genuinely believe that, because I think human beings are capable of far more than they ever let themselves believe they can. The second thing is, while you're heading for the lofty goal, remember the small victories. Every little step that you take climbing the mountain will get you closer to the top. And I think that's something that we also don't do very well, and that's why most people give up. And I think the kind of compounding thing of that is never overlook the benefit of marginal gains. If I go to sleep earlier for 80% of the nights in a month, I'm going to be more well rested, I'm going to push myself, I'm going to be better. If I do my work 80%, I don't have to be perfect, because perfect doesn't exist. Always shoot for perfection, but don't expect it. And really make sure that you're along the way, you're taking the small victories, you're analysing yourself and enjoying the process. And I think if you do that, then you can be successful in almost anything you put your mind to.
So I think that's the conclusion that we have to keep with ourselves. So again, Callan, thank you very much for not just being for a while with us, but also imparting us your wisdom. I think you have quite a bit of it, also from that experience as a driver yourself. So again, thank you very much. We hope that the weekend will be very good for your drivers, and not just the weekend, but the rest of the season as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.